All right. Well, welcome back to joining us for this week's Tipple's presentation of the Wine of the Week. This is Elizabeth and Jeff Beaudre, the owners of Tipple's Bruising the Wines in Gainesville, Florida. Thank you for joining us. Something appropriate to the season. We're going to have champagne tonight. We'll get into the terminology a little bit later. This week, we're going to be having the Piper-Heidsiek Brut Cuvée 1785 champagne from, of course, Champagne, France, because if it's not from Champagne, France, it is not champagne. It may sparkle, but it is not a champagne. One of my only pet peeves that I have an issue with. Anyway.
One of your only pet peeves.
One of my only about wine. No, there's probably only about 100, you know. It's one of the top 100, maybe a top 2. All right. So if you've not already done so, it's his time to pop corks, popping bottles here. I chilled mine down to around 40 degrees. I didn't want it to go all the way down into the 30s. If it does, it can be a little hard to taste some of the nuance. So I like it to be just a little warmer than that, 40 to 45 degrees. Great way to do that.
I don't know why I did, like I jumped. I knew it was coming, but still.
Give it at least an hour in the fridge. It'll bring it down there. This guy could go a little longer. Beautiful, beautiful. Using really simple glasses so that everyone can see on camera too what we have. That's for you.
Thank you.
Or there's a kind of that cut crystal. It'd be hard to see.
True.
So there's my little harder pour, and I didn't do as nice of a job for myself, so I had to wait for it to relax. All right, so.
Hey, Jeff.
Yeah.
Hey, can I ask a quick question? I know we've had a champagne before, but can you speak to kind of the etiquette and proper way to open champagne?
Okay, well.
There's a wrong way to do it?
Well, the big thing would be, I mean, you know, most of it's just about safety. You know, obviously you want to make sure you're not jostling the bottle a lot because you don't want to shake this guy up, right? You remove the cage. When you remove the cage, all right. So the big thing here that you would do is like, so you've got the cage on here. If the cork was still under there, so you unscrew the cage and you take it off. If you are not immediately working on it, you hold it with your thumb on top of the cork in case it were to you know, just expel itself in the case it were to, you know, just burst out. So you hold it either like this or with your thumb on top when the cage is relieved. And then you just simply grab and twist in a very slow way so that rather than just trying to yank it out as quickly as possible, which will really disturb everything in there and much more likely to give you a gusher, you just kind of gently release. And then you'll get a much better result out of that. But yeah, one of the bigger things is once the cage is removed, your thumb needs to become the safety. So
Maybe don't point it at people when you're taking it off and stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
You'll shoot your eye out.
That's right. But good question. All right.
No, well, the reason that I asked is I thought I had heard once, maybe a long time ago, that if you're doing the pop the bottle thing, like you see like after the World Series and everything, that right. You're affecting the flavor of the wine. Is that not true, or is it just more of a safety thing?
People talk about that. They call it bruising the wine, you know. And so you're right. You'll see them do that, and they'll take off the cage and they'll put their thumbs under it and push it out to really make it go hard, and boom, you know, and it goes in there. I don't know how much that's really going to change your experience, other than losing half your bottle of champagne. Okay. Right. Bruising the wine is an awfully in-depth, you know, nuanced idea.
So you haven't tasted like you.
I've really never done a back-to-back tasting where I kind of abused one wine and didn't, but I mean, yeah. Okay. Technically, it's
an interesting question.
Yeah.
Jeff, one more question. Someone who's really into champagne said that the louder the pop, the less, what did they say? Well, I guess the more quieter the pop, the better the champagne.
Well, it's an interesting thought there. There's a couple of different ways. I'm thinking, why would people say that, right? The champagnes come at different levels of carbonation. So it could just simply be that with lower carbonation, you're going to have a more, a more contact with your palate and taste it more. So maybe their perception is that makes it a better champagne. I wouldn't say it's an empirical thing or something I've heard a lot about. The other idea could be aged, right? So there are champagnes called from a sub-region in Champagne region, France, right? Called Cremant, which are lower carbonation. Also, if you age your champagne, you lose some carbonation over time. So that's going to taste even better. It's been aged.
Okay.
It's a very ageable wine, which we'll talk about why in a little bit.
All champagnes are ageable?
Champagne, yes, all champagne. Right. So
I specifically meant champagne.
Yeah, I know
didn't
you
mean all
did.
sparkling.
Yeah,
Right.
no, I was trying to decide whether to say, and there are sparkling that you can age.
Okay.
But champagne, because all of them are such a high quality, because they command such a high price,
Okay.
they're all ageable.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, they command such a high price because they're high quality.
Right.
They're not high quality because of the price.
Right. Yes. Yes. I misspoke. The way
Yeah.
I said
Well,
that.
I just wanted to clarify.
Listen, yeah. Good point.
Because they're so expensive, it means they're high quality.
That's right.
No?
We all know the quality always goes with price.
Yeah.
That's right. Beautiful, beautiful. All right, so let's take a look at the opening page, and we'll talk about what we're smelling and tasting.
Okay.
All right, so the Piper-Heidsiek Cuvée Brut, 1785. We'll talk about what cuvée means and such, because I'll do the wine label next. Ratings: Wine Spectator 92, Jeff Dunnick 91. This is not an unusual thing for these guys. They pull in those 90s all the time. Food pairings for champagne are very interesting in that they're very, very versatile. So you can go from oysters and caviar and light fishes, which makes sense. You're talking about a white wine, right?
Mhm.
Or steak and fried chicken. And people talk about fried chicken, it is a great
We
pairing.
did a tasting with fried chicken 2 years ago or something, right?
This-
Maybe longer.
Probably 3 now because
Okay.
of COVID, and we lose a year,
Yes,
you're right?
true.
But anyway, but it is great because of that, you got the fried chicken, there's a little grease in there. But the bubbles elevate, they kind of cleanse the palate, and it works really, really well. And steak, you can drink champagne with steak.
So why?
Once again, one of the big things about red wines,
Mhm.
right, is that you have the tannins and maybe some acidity in there, cleansing the palate so that you enjoy the flavor of the steak fresh.
Okay.
Well, the bubbles and the acidity in a champagne are going to do the exact same thing.
Okay. Sorry, I had a sneeze attack me and then
Mm.
it went away. So
Hmm.
I wasn't shocked by what you said. What?
All right. Let's stop sharing the screen.
Okay.
We'll go back and we'll talk a little bit about what we're tasting. So varietal content. This is a blend of 3 grapes. It is a blend of Pinot Noir, Pinot Meunier, and Chardonnay.
Okay.
And those are the main grapes of Champagne. So alcohol content, 12%. And age-worthy, I talked about that a little bit, right? We'd like to go into that a bit. Yes, very, very much age-worthy. Okay, so some of the champagnes can be hundreds of years old. I mean,
Really?
champagne can really age.
So is it the most ageable wine?
It is certainly one of the most ageable.
There are other
wines.
ones that might hang out for hundreds of years too.
Yes, Riesling is a good
Okay.
example, and Riesling's a white, which is another thing to say, okay, wait a minute, this is a
Right.
white wine.
Yeah.
What do you mean so age-worthy? Why, right?
Mhm.
So we'll go through we have alcohol content, 12%,
Yeah.
sufficient,
Okay.
right?
It's fairly low. I mean,
Mm.
compared to a lot of the other ones
Compared
that
to
we-
reds,
Yeah.
yeah. So tannins, non-existent, right? So that's not
So
helping.
why is it age worthy?
Acid,
Okay.
and then something the others don't have, carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is a very good preservative and helps it to
Oh,
age
okay.
slowly. So before you guys jump out there and say, all right, I'm going to lay something down for my 75th birthday, which is great, do that. But it's one of the most temperamental ageable wines.
Oh, really?
Yes, they want very little to no light and a very consistent 50 to 55 degrees as a cellar
Ah.
temperature in order to age properly for a huge extent. I mean, you want to age it 10 years, throw it on your shelf.
Okay.
Not a problem, because they are robust enough to handle that.
Mhm.
But if you want to get a 50-year-old guy, that kind of a thing, even with any wine, you have to take care of it properly.
Okay.
You want to give it 10 years, keep it in a nice, dark, dry, place, that kind of a thing with a lot of them. But if you want something that'll be 50 years, you're probably going to need humidity and temperature control to keep that cork safe.
Okay, so I have a question. When you see like wine cellar refrigerators, okay, or even rooms, okay, a lot of times you'll see, especially in newer model homes, like I'm just thinking of you're walking in, you have this glass entrance, everything's lit so you can like notice the wine.
Right.
So that's not a good, I mean, it's beautiful
It
architecturally, but really it should be like walking into a dark closet.
Right. Yeah. That's the thing, is those aren't really made for high level aging.
Okay.
They're made for quality storage. I mean, it's definitely a step above, especially if you have some that have 2 different temperatures. So you can have your white ready to drink and your red, so ready to drink at around cellar temperature, instead of throwing it in the fridge, that kind of a thing. So a lot of those are meant for service, not so much for long-term aging.
Okay. So you would have it in there for like 10 years would be fine.
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, that'd be fine. Yeah.
But 50 years, not.
Right.
Okay.
You'd probably get mixed results on that. Maybe it'd be okay.
Okay.
Maybe not.
So if you were to purchase like a really old wine, well, you're hoping it was taken care of during that time.
Right.
But then you either want to open it right away or you're sticking it like in our non-existent cellars and basements.
That's right. Well, and that's why a lot of them, when you talk about a secondary market in the future, those are kept at third-party locations that certify the conditions that they've been kept in.
All right.
So if you're going to go to Baron Rothschild, 1977, Lafitte, you're going to want to know, how is this kept? Because I'm about to drop 15 grand on this bottle. Yeah, that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So, and you know what? I was just throwing numbers out there. Anyone who watches this on YouTube and says that is a ridiculous number, that is not what they go for. I get it. I was just putting some numbers.
The Lafitte was the one from Friends, though. I don't remember what year, but that's the one that he got mad at the waiter because he brought him the wrong year. Right. For any of you who are Friends fans, aficionados.
All right. So let's go into what we're smelling and tasting now.
Okay.
We kind of covered quite a bit actually before. We've already unpacked quite a bit before we get into it. So beautiful nose that is influenced by how much time this spent on top of the yeast that was used to ferment it, right? Because that's that kind of bready quality.
Oh, okay.
I call it like a sweet bread. Some people call it brioche. But there's a sweet bread and pear note there. Maybe a little bit of a ginger. A little ginger snap kind of thing. And then on the palate, apples, pears, sweet bread, some almond.
Okay, I'm not getting the almond. I gotta go back, revisit to get the almond.
Right after in the mid palate, as it goes back toward the finish, as it finishes off from the sweet bread and the fruit, kind of an almondy note.
Could it be more like cashew? Because I get some of that butter, I guess maybe from the Chardonnay grape. I don't know, like a cashew, like on that back part that you're talking about.
I can go with anything, kind of a little nuttiness.
A little nutty.
It's a bit nutty.
Oh, look. And it said almond, like marzipan.
Marzipan quality. Yeah.
Something
nutty. Exactly. Yeah. Yes. Excellent. And all right, after that, on the finish now, take that for a minute. Citrus rind and saltiness, which is one of the reasons it would go so well with raw oysters and caviar and that kind of a thing.
I definitely get that.
Right?
Yeah, I definitely, especially like even having put down my glass, I can do the saltiness for sure.
And part of this is because it's not ice cold. So we're able to pull out, because we're talking about a lot of flavors and we're talking about some distinctive moments across the palate, which I love that drama from this beverage, because it has a start, a middle, and an end, and they really are different experiences.
Yeah, for sure. You're going into the vocabulary of the label.
Yes.
Okay.
I'll be doing that next.
Okay. Because I was going to ask for some clarification on something.
Great. A really nice long tart finish after you get that kind of a rich start, getting to a tart fruity, and then finishing with almost that citrus salinity in the end. So you get to have a lot going on with this wine. And then the mouthfeel. So we've got a really nice, the mousse, all right? So we're talking about the bubbles and that kind of a thing. So champagnes are all carbonated in the bottle. That's part of the process, which will be the wine term of the week, all right? So we'll cover it that. Natural carbonation creates bountiful and smaller bubbles. Forced carbonation, where you just pump CO2 into a big tank, like you would get with, say, Cava, which is the sparkling from Spain, or Prosecco. Not that they have to be, there are some that are done, but most forced carbonation has bigger bubbles and they don't last as long. Like you can see, these guys are still coming up from the bottom.
So is that is that what is required from Champagne, the region of Champagne? Like if you're doing a sparkling champagne,
right,
then you have to have natural?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, you cannot force carb in champagne.
Okay.
Yeah, it's one of those where it's not just a region of growth, it's a style of production. It's both together. You have to do it that way.
Do they do other things in that's a stupid question, but they do other things in the region of Champagne?
It is not a stupid question, and I knew it was going to be asked, and it is unusual, but yes, there are a few still wines from Champagne.
All white?
Nope. Pinot, because they've got Pinot, they've got Chardonnay.
Okay.
So there are some Pinots, there are some Chardonnays, not many, and there are some that are literally this blend, but non-sparkling.
Okay.
So it's the blend of the three Champagne sparkling Champagne grapes, but still.
Okay. So how do they naturally carbonate?
That's going to be what we want to discuss. First, let's go talk about the label, but we will get to that.
Okay.
All right. Will you share this screen again, please?
What if one time I was just like, no, you do it?
Well, then I would do it.
Okay. I'm happy you know.
Excuse me.
That's good. Would you like for me to advance?
Yes, please.
Okay.
All right. Whoa, that's a major difference. That slide gives us no information. It's almost like I could have just done this. Anyway, so looking at the label, what does this guy tell us? All right, let's go. We'll look up at the neck. All right, so Piper-Heidsiek tells us who made it, right? We look down here on the main label. So Piper-Heidsiek Champagne. So it is a champagne. This is not a sparkling wine. It is a champagne. And sparkling wine, champagne is a sparkling wine, excuse me, but sparkling wine doesn't mean it's champagne. Yes, so
all squares are rectangles, not all rectangles are squares.
Exactly. So so Cuvée 1785, spoiler alert, that's the year they first started making the champagne, right? Okay, so Cuvée,
so brand new.
Yeah, right. Been around for a minute, hot minute.
It's just so funny because I look at 1785 and you start thinking about the years, but 1785, we were barely a country,
Right.
It hadn't even been a decade.
Yeah, and Piper-Heidsiek's been around since then.
Right.
By the way, what do you find out who their first spokesperson was? This is a great story.
Okay. Oh yeah, Jeff did say before when we were setting it up, I was like, I was so excited about champagne. And he said to me, the story behind this is great. So
it is. This is going to be a fun night.
Okay.
All right. So cuvée at heart means blending, right? So, but it can mean all kinds of things. You can have a cuvée, meaning a blending of different varietals of grape. There's no definitive definition of what cuvée has to mean in the wine world.
I think it was one of our wine terms. One of the
Did I do that one of the weeks?
I think so. Yeah.
So hopefully this will ring about. So it can mean a blending of different grapes. Sometimes. More often, I find it actually means a blending also of different areas. And that's what this means. This cuvée is the cuvée of Champagne, the region.
Okay.
All right. So you're getting the grapes, but they're coming from different areas within Champagne to optimize the flavor profiles they want, because Champagne has an overall style of temperature and
Okay.
soil.
Mhm.
But there are some sub regions that are a little bit different, and you can choose them for the different balance. Like if you want to pick a little more acid and a little more fruitiness, you can go to certain areas. So this cuvee is a blending of different grapes, but it's also a blending of different areas within
Are they a
Champagne.
negociant or do they own all those different areas?
They are a negociant.
Okay.
My understanding is, I believe they own some, but it's
But
not.
maybe not all.
Yeah,
Okay.
not all. Definitely not all.
Definitely.
All right, so there's the cuvee, right? So not all estate grown. You don't see estate anywhere in here. So it's not estate grown, right? They don't own it. They are buying some of these grapes, if not all of them that go in here. And Brut. So Brut is going to be a dry. A Brut is a dry, and Brut is also a blend of red and white grapes.
Oh, it means both of those
It means
things?
both of those things. It will be a dry blend of red and white grapes.
Okay. I always just associated it with dry.
So, right. And honestly, the strict definition is dry,
Okay.
but they tend to use it in this way
Mhm.
where when they say it's a Brut, it's always a blending of at least Chardonnay and Pinot,
Okay.
if not Pinot Meunier, like we have tonight. But if it's all white, it's going to be a Blanc de Blanc, a white of white,
Mhm.
right? And if it is one of all Pinot Noir, it would be a Blanc de Noir.
Okay.
And those both cost different amounts compared to the blend.
Which
More.
is the highest? Oh, there are more.
They're more, and the highest one is Blanc de Noir costs the most.
Okay.
So, all right, moving on. So here are the grapes. Pinot, the Chard, and the Meunier, all together.
So they don't bother to label.
Right.
Because they're like, well, there are two purplish looking ones, so we
Right.
have to label those.
Exactly, and the white one is Chardonnay. In Champagne, they would ask, what else would it be?
Mhm.
So once again, there are red grapes in here. Very short skin contact when they crush in order to not gain the color. And that's how that's done. So rosés, a lot of people say, oh, well, rosé, is that sweet? I hear that a lot. Doesn't make it sweet. The color of a rosé comes from additional skin contact. It has nothing to do with sugar extraction or sugar being left over. Completely independent decision.
I'm sorry, when you say short skin contact, what is that relative? So is it hours, days,
Minutes.
minutes?
Wow.
Yes. All right. So to put this in perspective, your favorite Italian rosé is the 11-minute rosé from the Italian, right? So it's named for the 11 minutes of skin contact.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and that makes a rosé.
Gives it that much.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we're talking minutes.
See, I would have thought more like days.
Yeah. I
Wow.
get that. Mhm. Yeah, they've got to move it on.
That's
Get
amazing.
it off those skins.
Yeah, that it gets color that quickly.
Mhm. All right. Let's go to the next one. Flavor. So I decided to go with the primary flavor profile of a Brut
Okay.
champagne. I thought that was easier rather than working our way through the three individuals
Mhm.
and then combining it and all that. So citrus, we've talked about that.
Mhm.
Yellow apple,
Mhm.
apples and pears, a creaminess. We talked about, I heard a little bit of like a butteriness described, and that's that kind of a creamy quality. In this case, most of that creamy quality is actually coming from time spent on the yeast. It's
Okay.
called time on lees. When it's on lees, it means it's the yeast that did its job and fell out of solution.
Mhm.
It can create like a creamy, that biscuity, almond, toasty quality,
Okay.
and some of the creaminess.
So this one is on the high end as far as the ABV because it's not. I mean, we're above the range that is showing there.
Right.
Mhm.
Well, the big thing is they want a really tart, fresh, refreshing wine here.
Mhm.
So we're dealing with a cool growth area, which is what they're battling with as the world environment temperatures change and the climate changes, or more of the climate extremes.
Mhm.
And they want grapes that can hang on the vine a long time to gain character, but not ripen fully, right? And certainly not over ripened with
Okay.
warmth. in order to keep that fresh acid tart.
Okay.
Because I've jumped ahead a little bit about what I'm going to talk about with
Right.
the Champagne region, but that,
So with a red, we're letting it ripen fully.
yes, I mean, most of the time,
Okay.
unless it's a Pinot.
Okay.
Because and once again, those are stylistic choices.
Mhm.
This is a style choice.
Okay.
It's not a requirement other than in Champagne, but
It is a requirement
yeah,
in Champagne.
but in the world, it is not. You can grow a warm growth Pinot if you want.
Okay.
And they do in California, and they sell it, and
Okay.
inexpensively, and it doesn't taste like what you're used to. But
if you like it, then
if you like it,
cool.
it's fine. All
Right.
Fine.
Okay.
Yeah, they'll grow. They'll soak up that sun and make some sugar. Like, bring it. So as long as it's not moist, because Pinot will rot if you look at it sideways with humidity. So don't even breathe on it. It's thin-skinned. So anyway, all right. All right, let's move on to the next. Let's go to our word. So the wine term this week I tied in is the classical method. Classical method for sparkling wine, sometimes referred to as the classic method or méthode classique. It's also called method, the Champagne method. I tend to call it probably the oldest version, which is méthode champenoise, because I think the phrase is beautiful. But it's the classic method. And what it means, really quite simply, is they ferment this wine and then they blend it. And then they put it into the bottle with a little additional new sugar and let it do what's a secondary fermentation to create the bubbles.
Okay.
So the yeast gets in there, munch, makes a little bit more alcohol, makes a lot more carbon dioxide, and it carbonates naturally within the bottle. And that is the classic method or méthode champenoise in Champagne, and it is sometimes used in other areas around the world. So I've had some Prosecco and some Cavas that use the classical method in the store, and some are force carved, which is fine too. So classical method is going to cost more. There's more effort.
That was my next question. If it costs more,
it costs more.
Does it taste better?
Yes, it does. It empirically does. And there's not a lot where I'll just throw down the gauntlet and say, no, classical method is a lot more effort for a good reason. It makes a better tasting sparkling wine every single time that I've had it. You can tell.
Okay.
It's more enjoyable across the palate with the smaller bubbles, more persistent bubbles, and it adds richness to the wine because it has a little more time with that yeast working.
So that richness, like more full bodied. Okay.
And more complexity in your flavors.
Okay.
Where you can have a lot of delightful Cava and Prosecco that is, it's like, oh, well, it's tart pears and apple and maybe a little salt and I'm done. And that's it. But that's fun. Great. Nothing wrong. Good for you. That's tasty. But I've had, especially Cava from this subregion, I wanted to bring them in, but they were out of them. We will drink them, but there is a family, an amazing Cava production family in Spain that to me makes the Champagne of Spain. And they use this method, and it is such an easily distinguishable quality difference. You drink theirs, you drink the others, and you say, oh, well, that's beautiful.
Okay. So are we going to do a comparison at some point?
That would be a good, when it comes back in, I will do exactly that. We'll do 2 bottles and we'll do a comparison of force carved versus classical method.
That sounds good. Maybe, I know it's kind of quick, but February, it's Valentine's Day. That could be.
I've got to wait to see when they're going to come in.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Unfortunately, I'm at the mercy of my distributor, and they're at the mercy of world shipping issues right now, bringing stuff in from Spain. So.
No, I'm sure we're all at the mercy of COVID. So there you go.
One thing you really won't hear me saying much about tonight is the evolution of the wine. It's pretty much going to taste like what it tastes like.
Is that typical of just Spain? I mean, of just Champagne or just or of all sparkling?
It's a typical of sparkling.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, there'll be mostly any changes you perceive will be temperature as it warms up. You'll get and it quiets down. You can have a little bit more of it on your palate as the carbon dioxide vents,
So for this, like, what?
Oh, I said something a little wrong.
Okay.
Unless it's been aged. At that point, the oxygen is going to have a lot more to work with.
Okay.
That it, that's coming in, and it's had time, it's been oxidized already. So you're going to get more change in an older bottle than a younger bottle.
That's interesting. Because I feel like a lot of the ones that we have, like especially reds, you're like, oh, this one's uptight. And if it had more time, then so like I feel like when we drink young reds, there's more evolution with the young reds than like the older reds. It's more like this is what it is.
Yeah,
but
you're
you're
right.
saying it's the reverse.
It's
with
the
this
reverse.
one. Okay, that's interesting.
Yes. That's why we have to drink all the time.
All the time.
That's right.
Would you like for me to advance?
Yes, please.
All right.
All right. So what kind of grapes are we talking about here? Well, up here in these northern areas, cool growth, low humidity, nice breeziness up there, thin-skinned grapes. It's really, we're dealing with certainly an influence from the skin. Otherwise, there would be very little flavor in here at all. But it's minimal compared to red, big, dark red wines. So it's kind of the opposite of what Petite Syrah is all about, because Petite Syrah is all about that big amount of skin to juice ratio. And here we're talking about a much less intense skin, nuanced, but a very important interior of providing the sugar and the acid that is needed.
Have we had I'm going to mispronounce it, the Pinot Meunier grape before?
No, because we've never had an actual champagne before.
Okay. Is that's the only thing that it's always like blended with something for champagne, or?
I've never seen an individual.
Okay.
It probably exists somewhere in the world, but it's certainly not in any way common.
Okay.
Which makes me want to find it.
You just have to go to the region and drink it right there.
You know how I am.
There you go.
Yes, please.
All right.
All right. So where in the world is Piper San Diego? There we go.
Thank you.
You're welcome. If I can't be a gentleman while pouring champagne, when will I be? All right. So where are we here? We are at the top of France. We're up here. So the northeastern part of France is where we are. Zooming in here. So this is Champagne. Champagne is a subsection of Burgundy. So people talk about it like it's its own thing, but it actually is a part of Burgundy, which starts at the purple. That's Beaujolais. Beaujolais, traditional Burgundy, which is Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, and then Champagne at the top. And you can see Germany's here. Well, so we're talking about a very cool area.
I'm looking at the name Heidsiek. Like that sounds either German or Austrian.
It is German, which we will talk about.
All right.
Yes, good call. Yeah,
and,
here you have.
Honestly, Piper seems more English than French, but I guess it's French.
It's French.
Okay.
So anyway, so here we are. Zoom in. So Champagne. Here we have, which we saw this. It looks a lot like Chablis, which is in Burgundy, right? The Chardonnay specialist section of Burgundy. Rolling hills. Very chalky soil, a nice breeze, cool temperatures, which they need all of that in order to, like I said, you want time on the vine without over ripening these grapes in order to keep a lot of fresh acidity in the wine you're making.
Is this fog I'm looking at here, or is that an optical illusion?
No, that's fog. But it's not coming in off of a bay or anything, it's far too far inland. So some of the traditional look of Champagne, right? Though there are some very new and like modern looking things, which actually the Piper house now is.
Oh, okay.
So Champagne, traditionally very cool growing region. I talked about the ripening already, so why cover it again? However, because they have to be on the vine a long time, be monitored for mildew and such, it's a lot of hand tending.
Okay.
And that is a big part of the price, not just that they can command it, but that there's legitimate work involved in this grape. Pinot Noir is a traditionally very fussy grape. Chardonnay, to grow it the way you want it to be here, is very fussy. So we're talking about thin-skinned grapes that, you know, need a lot of work. Chalky soil. Let's go to the next one. There we go.
Yeah.
Chalky soil with a very thin layer on top
Mhm.
for things to, you know, that gives a little bit of organic material. You can see, like, they're not kidding. That is,
Yes.
there's a lot of chalk and a very thin organic
Mhm.
layer. You can see, so those vines are not dealing with a lot of fertilizer to help
Minerals,
them.
yeah.
Lots of minerality,
But
not organic
not-
material. Right. It's amazing everything that grows on that. So, well, the trees and everything.
Oh, okay. Because I was like, I thought pretty much grapes grew on that.
Right.
But you're right, there are trees. in
Right.
there.
So here's Piper-Heidsiek talking about a modern creation.
Yes.
Gorgeous, right?
It looks, that area
Mhm.
reminds me of the butterfly
Oh, yeah.
exhibit
At
at the museum. Mhm.
Museum of Natural History. Very
Mhm.
nice. So the Piper-Heidsiek winery. All right. So Florenz Louis Heidsiek. All right. So he's a German
Mhm.
immigrant, but then his name is also Florenz Louis. So there had to be a lot of back and forth
Right.
going on here, right?
Mhm.
Comes to the region in 1777 and falls in love with a wonderful French lady, and decided he had to start a winery, which he did. In 1785, he had his vintage presented to Marie Antoinette.
Oh my God.
He was very persistent and got her to have a bottle, and she said, "This is amazing. I'm going to tell everyone your stuff's the best." And so their first kind of spokesperson was Marie Antoinette.
That's amazing.
Right?
Yes.
I think that's pretty cool. So
And she didn't actually say let them eat cake. So there you go.
there we go. Oh. So from 1785 in 1815, so 1785, 1815, we're talking about what, 30 years.
Yeah.
Christian Heidsiek, his nephew, and Henri Piper come in to help with operations, and
Okay.
they bring this to an international fame.
Was Henri Piper a relative as well?
He was not.
Okay.
No, he just came in and worked really, really well with Christian. They were this amazing duo, and they really they elevated the success of the Heidsiek CA greatly. Right?
Do
And
we
brought
know
it.
if one of them was like the winemaker and one was?
They did not
Okay.
say. They talked
All
about
right.
it. I think they're mostly the businessmen and having the wine made.
Okay.
So, so Christian was married. All right. And then in 1828, this was 1850. In 1828, Florenz, the founder,
Mhm.
died, and the
Okay.
two took over officially.
Okay.
So now
And
we have
that's when it became Piper-Heidsiek.
no,
No. Okay.
it was still Heidsiek NCA,
Okay.
right? Which is the name that we can see on the screen, right? So in 1838, so in 1828, they took over. In 1838, Christian dies suddenly and unexpectedly.
Oh, geez.
And here's off the quote, after a suitably respectful period of mourning, Henri married Christian's widow.
Okay.
And now it's Piper-Heidsiek, and officially all together in the family and family owned and controlled.
I mean, I don't think things like that were very unusual.
It was not unusual back then. Your friend's wife, your friend died. A lot of time brothers would marry
Right. Yeah.
the widow if they were unmarried.
Yeah. Sometimes
So-
they were required to. So.
right. So
Right.
that was really not, I know now you're like, well,
Well, I mean, also, I think it wouldn't be that unusual now either. I mean, you're both mourning the same person. So
Right.
there you go.
so
That's interesting. So wait, what year was that?
that was 1838.
Okay.
So
And
other
they
things
started
that
together
happened.
in 1815.
Yes, those two
Okay.
started. Yeah. And it was founded in 1785.
Mhm.
Then other things that happened during World War II, it was occupied with all of Champagne. And at that point, there was a Piper-Heidsiek. The descendant was a woman who got married.
Mhm.
he went off to war to go help the thing, but they actually hid weapons in the cellar to help the French resistance.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
Right. And then he died during the war. And then
But she was the descendant.
She was the descendant. She was a real powerhouse and was like, we are bringing this back.
Okay.
Now, after the war was over and they got it back and they brought it back and they've just gone, they've done amazingly well since then. As it is now no longer family owned. It's now owned by a larger conglomerate group.
Okay.
But
That's a shame.
it's directed by Michael Mondavi, who I've always said is one of the Mondavis that really creates quality product. He's involved directly. His importing group is amazing. They have beautiful wines.
So, and that was one of the questions, is Michael related to Robert Mondavi?
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. So yeah, Michael and Isabella they do great work. That's the thing. There's unfortunately some versions of the Mondavi name out there that are not related to their work,
Right.
that make people suspicious of the name. And I think that's very sad, but that's a whole separate discussion.
I think we've talked about that briefly.
Yeah.
Another.
Yeah. And I'm not hating on anybody, but their work, Michael and Isabella, beautiful
Just a
work.
step above.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think it's just a really great history on these guys.
I like that they kept the original names.
Oh yeah,
Mhm.
I agree. And they only produce sparkling wine. So,
Okay.
so theirs are all sparkling.
Piper-Heidsiek,
Mhm.
but not all in the region of Champagne.
Right. There are
Okay.
some areas in Champagne that have some still wine and a dessert wine.
No, but you said theirs were all sparkling.
So Piper-Heidsiek wines are all sparkling.
So are they all in the region of Champagne?
Oh, yes.
So they're all Champagne.
They're all champagnes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was my question.
Right. And then, of course, to confuse everything is technically there are some champagnes that are not sparkling.
That is quite confusing.
Yes, but it's such a small amount. Don't even worry about it. Just, as a little note of, well, that's interesting.
Mhm.
Like, other than that, don't worry about wrapping your head around it. Just like the fact that I found out this year, and I have educated several wine reps that come into me, that there is a champagne dessert wine called Ratafia.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's like a port.
It's, if you will. Yeah.
Okay.
And more
It's not
like a
from Portugal,
it's more
but-
like a Sauterne.
Brian wants
So-
that.
Brian wants that.
Yeah.
I heard you say it, and he's like, ooh.
Yeah, it's so rare. The description online was, you're lucky to find it in Paris,
Oh,
let alone the United States,
okay.
because they make so little of it.
So what I heard was, we need to go to Paris.
Well, we could do that, or we could deal with the 3 bottles of Tipples.
Do we really have 3 bottles?
I have 3 bottles. Yes, so thought it might be fun. We could
Yes.
like,
Okay.
Bring it to New Year's Eve.
oh, well, that could be.
That's
Okay.
a good idea.
All right.
Okay.
We have 2 bottles. Anyway, I'm excited. I've never had it. And I've spoken to several of my wine reps and they're like, we had no idea this thing existed. But I love going down the rabbit hole of wine research. So that's me.
How did you find it?
I was just looking up interesting facts about Champagne. And this was months ago.
Mhm.
And I stumbled across it. And anyway, it was
Very cool.
quite the happy find. So it's a little tiny distributor that had it too, not one of the big guys. And it's the same one that had that wonderful Tannat that we had from France.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So Vlad has amazing
Like your
palate.
favorite
Yeah.
grape, right?
I'm a Tannat guy. I love Tannat. All right. So that is the story of Piper-Heidsiek. You want to stop and talk for a minute, and we'll just do the last couple of
And
things?
well, it's like, to me, you see these pictures and you think this is definitely, this was at the birth of our country. This is crazy that it's been
Right.
around that long. Yeah.
Right. I can't remember if I had I think I had another inside shot of Piper now that I think of it, but we'll look at it in a minute.
Okay.
All right. So now that I threw all of that out there at you, and the people of Piper-Heidsiek would probably tell me I've missed a bunch, but I think I gave you something to chew on there. You listened to that, you've tasted the wine. Anything you guys want to share or ask at this point? Some great questions while I was talking, which I really appreciate because I love I love going on tangents. It's one of my favorite things.
Wait, we can't hear you, Julie, if you're asking us something.
Sorry, I was talking to the kids.
I thought perhaps that might be what was going on.
Right. Harriet made it, and that's good to see.
Was she not going to make it?
She was sleeping.
Oh, I didn't see that.
I was
She wasn't at the
napping.
beginning, and I was like, "Where's Harriet?"
I figured
Napping,
Jerry just
and-
had the camera on himself.
Jerry said he couldn't wake me up, so evidently I was in deep sleep.
All right.
Well, we missed last week because it was Paul's actual birthday sleepover. So we were like, we can't miss this week. It's like champagne and the week before New Year's. So
Well,
Wow.
last week we didn't have one.
Yeah,
Oh.
last week because it was right before Christmas. So,
Right.
oh,
Yeah,
perfect.
it's the 1 week we've skipped.
right.
Mhm.
That's why I planned my kid's birthday then, so that I wouldn't miss a wine tasting.
You know what? And I
There you go.
appreciate that. And I accept that that is the appropriate priority.
I think Paul deserves like an extra present for being born at that time so that he wouldn't interrupt the wine tastings.
This kid is not short on presents. It's like people feel so sorry because his birthday is the 22nd and Lily's birthday is the 26th. And everybody feels so sorry for them that like, oh no, everybody's gonna combine birthdays and Christmas and blah blah blah. So they get like twice the presents they would normally because people feel sorry for them. Like their life is not hard.
All right. All right. Let's jump back. We'll finish up.
Okay.
All right. That's
Next.
good. Next one, please. All right. So here's the interior of that amazing building. So very, very modern, but
Very
gorgeous.
modern. Yeah, beautiful.
Right.
I love it. I love that recessed
Mm-hmm.
area with the
Yeah.
tables and
I'd love to
Yeah.
go there.
Yeah.
That sounds great. All right. Ease next.
it's very
Mm-hmm.
modern, but the recess is almost like a mid-century modern type
Yeah. That kind of throwback
addition to it. Mhm.
60s, 70s.
Yeah.
Mhm. All right, so ratings on this guy. Oh, it's that time. So this guy's pulling, 91, 92s, 93s constantly
Mhm.
from, those guys, but that does not mean it is your opinion. They're all saying basically it lives in the land of outstanding quality. But maybe you think it's just a very good wine. Hey, there's nothing wrong with that either, right? You can say, hey, look, that's really tasty. I'm glad I drank it, but that could be a very good wine, It could be a good wine. Once again, I don't know about with the price levels commanded in champagne that you would want to have something that was just good, but I would certainly want something that was very good to outstanding. But in the wine world in general,
Mhm.
if you just were to pick up a casual Tuesday drinker for $12 and it was a good solid wine, if I had an 84, that should be fine. Though most people define it as a failure, and I think that's just an inappropriate perception.
I think our daughter lives in the 80 to 84 range for what she drinks. Don't you think?
Well, except for some which are definitely down in the 70s.
Depends how long they've spent in the car prior to.
I'm just thinking of certain brands.
Okay.
Okay. So, all right. So,
Okay, so we have Brian says an 88 because he loves sweet wines. Julie says
Nice.
91.
yeah.
Brendan and Laura 90.
Mhm.
The Hogsets 90, 91, 92. Easy to
Mhm.
drink. And then Paul 92, Linda 93.
Right. Nice.
I would have said 93. I'm with Linda.
Excellent.
Yeah, I love this. I really like Brut champagnes. Yeah.
Well, that's great.
So back in the day when I drank like sweet
Mm-hmm.
sparklings, I was very into Asti Spumante, but not anymore.
Martini and Rossi, baby.
Julie's laughing because she probably liked it too.
Well, be that as that may. Yeah, these I love the complexity of this wine. It's a very well made,
Mhm,
very reasonably priced, which is worth mentioning.
mhm,
Champagne. This is price wise an entry level champagne,
mhm.
and but it gives you the full champagne experience. It's good quality wine. It really is. There's nothing like what's
I was going to say Consuelo agrees with Linda and I.
Oh,
93.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
like
So we've got
Mm.
88 as our outlier, and then it's pretty much 90 to 93. Mhm.
like I get that you can have some Dom and Pierre Jouet and all, those are amazing winemakers.
Mhm.
The big difference there, what you would go to, Dom and Pierre Jouet, Epoch anyway, they have a regular brand. These guys, which I didn't really get into. All right, so almost all champagne you see is non-vintage. It's a blending of multiple years.
Oh,
Yeah, or
that's interesting.
yeah, so it's like port. They actually use the same tradition, right? They only put the date on it, a vintage, if it's an exceptional year, in which case they take all those grapes, put them alone, and make just that year, so it doesn't blend.
Okay.
So Dom Perignon is only vintage grapes. They don't make one if there's no vintage year declared. They don't make a vintage.
So if they taste the grapes and they're like, "This is shit," they don't make it.
Well, if they say this is anything less than exceptional,
Okay.
all right.
Okay.
So that, I mean,
Mhm.
yeah. So
Okay.
and that's declared by the actual AVA itself, as Champagne has people that run it. They
Oh.
declare, not just the
They come
individual
by and taste
winemakers,
your grapes.
everyone's in the overall quality of the harvest that year.
Wow.
And if it's high enough quality, then they declare vintage year.
And are they tasting the grapes, or we've already squeezed it and we have the juice prior to fermentation?
I would think the grapes. I believe
Okay.
they do it from the grape.
Okay.
Yeah. And
We-
and they know what's going on. They can see, that this is the the stars have
weather
aligned, the
conditions have been
weather's
great.
right. Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. And they'll know to expect it.
Okay.
They're probably tasting along the way and saying, all right, yeah, this is an exceptional year.
Okay.
So in those years, most likely,
Mhm.
those houses that want to make a vintage year, all the grape prices skyrocket.
I'm sure.
And so they buy almost all the grapes that would go into these later. But then what that would mean, and I can't tell you, I can't say, oh, it was that one and this one, but that would mean that like the difference between an exceptional year and their normal years is that much.
Okay.
I mean, we're not talking.
If you're a super taster, you're tasting the difference. If you're not, you're probably not.
You're probably not tasting that much of a difference.
Okay.
Right. And I'm not knocking those guys.
Right.
That is legitimate. It's an exceptional year. There's going to be a notch above, right? But you're getting those same grapes when you get in the regular ones,
Right.
and you're paying, in
Half
the
the
40s
price? Okay.
instead of 180.
Oh, that's a huge difference.
It's a huge difference.
Okay.
Now this is entry level, so this is in the 40s, and that's because it's a cuvee. Now, some of the other ones you'll have like Premier Cru, so it's one specific area, not just throughout Champagne.
So what was?
And those jump up to 80, 90 really quickly.
Okay.
But 80 to 90 very quickly versus 180. That's more of the jump you're talking about.
Still a huge difference.
Yeah.
Because it's more than double if you're talking 80
Right.
to 180.
Right. But this guy is giving you, which is one of the things I love, as a tremendous, it's a delicious wine, great story, all legit. It's also a tremendous value because here we are sipping on this wine, in this case, because it was on sale this week, sub 40, right? And it gives you all of it. It's telling you what you can expect as you move into Champagne.
Okay.
So it's giving you all those aspects to think about if you're going to jump in for a special occasion or just because you're awesome to something at $180. Now you know exactly what you're looking for.
Okay.
Because this has some of all of that. So that's what excites me.
What
about
are
this
you
red
going
wine.
to taste as the difference between this wine, so 40 to 180? Like specifically, what is the taste difference?
It's going to change differently depending on the winemaker and the areas that they're from, right? So some of them are going to be more tart and lean. Some of them, it's just going to be more of a balance. Some of them will have even more brioche bready quality. It's up to the winemaker.
Okay.
So, but there's no one thing that you'll taste that's different.
Okay. All right. Oh, we have one more score. Cheryl said 92. So yeah.
Nice. Very
I
nice.
think on average, we're probably almost at a 92.
Great.
Probably like 91.8 or 9.
Yeah, that's,
Yeah.
I'd be definitely a 91, 92. It's an outstanding wine.
Yeah.
It's absolutely delicious.
Mhm.
I think it's fantastic. Well, that's why I chose it. I really do like this wine so much. And it's great to share the story and share the wine with you guys. I appreciate it. So on to I need to thank my sources.
Okay.
Wine Folly, always, they are amazing. When it's maps and flavor profiles and things, they save me so much time and trouble. I utilize them all the time. They deserve so much credit. They're a wonderful resource. 750, that's my resource for buying all the wines. Wikipedia is always helpful with grabbing some information about all of my subregions.
And if you use Wikipedia, please give them like $5 or something so they'll keep going.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
DeLong Wine, that was one of the maps. Wine Enthusiast, a lot of information I pulled from reading just some background reading on an article. Piper-Heidsiek itself, which yes, one would think they'd be happy to help. And escape.com was one of the pictures. So
Okay.
all right. So next week, this is going to shock you.
The first one of the new year.
First one of the new year. That's true. I believe
2022.
January 4th is the date.
Is it?
Yep.
Oh, it is.
Yep. So of all places, and this will shock you.
California?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, but a place that we've been to, in a way you would think, how have you been there so many times? But the winery makes so many good wines.
We're revisiting a winery,
Yes.
like not just a region.
Not just
or
a region.
country,
We're revisiting
an
a
actual
winery. Yes.
Okay.
All right.
Should I reveal?
Yes.
Okay.
We're off to Bodega Garzon again. I'm sorry, those guys, I don't even, you know what? I'm not going to apologize. I'm going to say, you're
Is
welcome.
this the third time?
Yes,
Okay.
it's the third time.
Yeah.
So Uruguay
Mhm.
again, but their wine is fantastic. This is such a cool wine. All right. We're going to be drinking the Marcelon. Marcelon, what is that grape, right? I think it would be telling if I just told you now. That's right. I think we need to leave it. It's a really, really, all right. So, but I will tell you this. Lovers of big, bold reds, you're going to be happy.
Okay. So
All right.
Julie will be happy. Brian, not so much.
Right. Brian's come a long way. That's right. So Marcelon, and it's not a blend. It is a grape.
Oh, it's single varietal.
It is a single varietal.
Oh, very cool.
Really, really cool background on this guy. You guys are going to love it. So, and I just got to say, these guys knock it out of the park. They're going to get the attention. That's how it is. Garzon is amazing.
That sounds great.
So I hope you guys will make the time to join us again, just like you did tonight. Thank you so much.
Yep. And I like the food pairings.
Yes. Well, it was a long day.
I have to tease you a little bit for the spelling sometimes.
Yeah,
so.
that's why you're not getting a refill.
All right, I'll stop the share.
Thank you. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Very happy.
Cheers.